Okay, so welcome back to my channel, you guys. It's Dorothy, and today's video we're going to go into part 2 of chapter 8 of Surviving Hitler, A Boy in the Nazi Death Camps by Andrea Warren. The first video got cut off because Jesse had called me and I had to take him and the baby something to drink outside. So let's get right into this video. This video is going to contain sensitive topics and foul language. If you do not wish to continue, I suggest you click off the video now. You have been warned. I hoped Aaron and Moshe and the other men I had known in the first camp were still alive, but I would never be able to find this out. Jack lost track of passing days by watching the seasons. He knew he had been in captivity almost a year. He had become 16 when winter turned to spring in 1943, but he had no way of knowing which day was his actual birthday. In a concentration camp, you could think of only staying alive, Jack said. Every day, every hour was a new challenge. You had to be constantly alert to protect and care for yourself the best you could. You were always on the lookout for a scrap of food. It was very stressful. The only relevance weather had for us was what obstacles it presented. We were freezing, wet, or suffocating from heat. We were always hungry and exhausted. That never changed. We had no knowledge about the war, who was winning or losing. The guards told us nothing. From the guard towers surrounding the camps, guards could keep careful watch on the prisoners. Rumors were part of daily life. Prisoners lived on them. Rumors about the war, rumors about upcoming selections when SS officers would weed out the weakest prisoners and ship them off somewhere. Rumors about transfers to other camps. Each day, Jack said, you wondered, how do I get assigned to less difficult work? How do I make contact with a civilian on a work detail who will slip me a piece of bread from time to time? In a short space of time, Jack was moved twice to other camps. They took us where they needed us to work, he said. The camps were different, yet alike. Same overcrowded barracks, each with a number. Same food, thin soup, bad bread, same rules, same lice, same filth. Same guard towers with searchlights where guards watched you with binoculars, their machine guns at the ready. Always a crematorium with its black smoke. You went to bed in the dark and awoke in the dark and were counted in the dark, so you would be ready to work when it was light. They beat you for any tiny thing. One of the worst camps Jack was in was called Grossrosen. He and the other prisoners arrived late at night. No barrack space was available for them. They were ordered to sleep on a cold concrete floor with no pillows or blankets. We were so crowded, we were forced to lie on our sides. If one person turned, we all had to turn. But even in this circumstance, sleeping was not a problem. Not ever. We could have slept standing up, Jack said. The camp had a granite quarry where many prisoners lost their lives. Some of the concentration camps, including Grossrosen, had the ironic words, work makes one free, above their entrances. The quarry at Grossrosen concentration camp is now filled with water. When Jack was there, many prisoners died of brutal working conditions. Many others committed suicide by hurling themselves off the ledge into the pit of the quarry. While carrying heavy pieces of granite up steep sides, they could slip and plunge to their deaths. Every week at least a dozen prisoners committed suicide by hurling themselves into the pit, Jack said. Fortunately, I was only in that camp for a short time. Conditions were brutal and I saw many terrible things there. Because Jack worked hard and did not complain, he escaped the worst wrath of capos and guards, though he received an occasional kick or blow like everyone else. Going out of his way to get along sometimes paid off. In one camp, instead of food being served in a central outside location, the soup was carried from barracks to barracks in a large kettle. Jack was selected to help carry the heavy kettle, a dangerous job because of its weight and hot contents, but for his efforts he was usually given an extra bowl of soup from the very bottom of the kettle, where it was the thickest. One time he was assigned to help build a sand bed for a railroad. Working around him were civilians who were on forced labor details, just as he had back at his uncle's village. They still had enough to eat, and I would beg for bread, or they would slip me some without my asking, Jack said. This lasted only a couple of months, but it helped me keep going. If it was more than a scrap of food, I shared it with other prisoners. They did the same with me. Surviving the work assigned him was another challenge. One of Jack's jobs was a chemical plant. He helped load and unload chemicals into railroad cars. Sometimes he worked inside the plant. Civilian workers had masks and gloves to protect them from the chemicals, but we prisoners had no protection. Jack said, the fumes were very strong and burned our eyes and throats. If I had stayed there long, I believe the chemicals would have permanently damaged my lungs and eyes. Prisoners worked every day on labor details. When they could no longer work, they were killed. Many starved to death or died of disease. Another of his jobs was to unload cement bags from railroad cars. Guards with their vicious German shepherds stood over the prisoners. The boxcar was about 4 feet off the ground, and prisoners had to walk down a shaky wooden plank with a bag as heavy as a man on their shoulders. If you fell off the plank and dropped the bag, it would split open, making a mess. Then the dogs would instantly be on you. Going down that plank was very scary, but I remembered how I used to die from ships in the harbor of Judea, said Jack. That was scary too, but it was fun, so I pretended this was a boyhood game, and I never fell. Prisoners always watched for opportunities to help themselves. The thickly padded empty cement bags had special value. They could be made into vests if you tore out holes for your head and arms, and they would help block wind and cold and keep you from freezing in the winter when you were working outside and had only a thin uniform. Doing this hurt nothing, yet it was forbidden, Jack said. Some of us did it anyway. One of our guards carried a bamboo stick and would strike us across the back to see if we were wearing the cement bag vests. If so, we were punished, but I was never caught. The worst part of the day was roll call. Not only did it mean standing at attention for hours on end, but it also when prisoners were punished for some slight infraction or simply terrorized at random. Everyone was forced to watch when a prisoner was beaten, whipped, shot, hanged, or torn apart by the dogs. In one camp, 6 Russian prisoners of war managed to escape, but they were caught later on. Their bullet-riddled bodies were dumped in the middle of the parade ground, and the prisoners had to march around them. This guard tower and the electrified barbed wire fence at Auschwitz were typical of towers and fences at all of the concentration and labor camps, but there is grass in this photo. Had there been any during the war, the prisoners would have eaten it. We were warned this would happen to us if we tried to escape, Jack said. Every single one of us fantasized about escaping, but to where? All of Europe was occupied by the Nazis. There was no safe place for any Jewish. The Russians had a homeland to return to. We Jews did not. We also kept many from trying to escape, knowing that even if they succeeded, many fellow prisoners would be killed in retribution. The Nazis terrorized us into doing what they wanted, Jack said. In photos, you can see the dirt and the starving skeletons of prisoners in the concentration camps, but you could not smell the fear. Fear is so devastating. To survive the Nazi death camps, you had to be very clear and very lucky. Jack was determined to survive. I believed my family was waiting for me. When this was over, they would be there outside the camp to greet me, and I would have beaten Hitler at his game. That is the end of chapter 8. I will see you guys in the next video for chapter 9. Bye.